9-year-old Naruto Uzumaki took a deep breath, feeling the breeze caress his body. He exhaled and ran forward. He flew at top speed through the trees, shuriken in hand. As he ran, multiple targets were seen dotting the path laid out for him. As he passed each target, he released a few shuriken, seeing them hit their targets dead on. He moved to the next, and the next, until he came to the final set of targets. One in each direction at varying heights, one behind a boulder, and one on the other side of a small waterfall a short distance away. He jumped into the air, throwing a shuriken at the waterfall. The projectile curved around the water, hitting its target. He threw 4 more while doing a mid-air twist. Each one hit its target. Lastly was the one behind the boulder. Naruto was about to touch the ground when he released a blast of wind chakra at the earth. The jutsu sent him up into the sky. At his apex, he threw a kunai, so it was parallel from the target, which was 3 meters below. He threw a second kunai, which collided with the first. The kunai redirected to the target, hitting it in the center. The blonde landed on the ground, looking up at his handiwork. He let out a sigh as he heard a voice ahead of him. "Impressive, for one so young," the old voice said. Naruto grinned happily at the face of the old, third Hokage, who was wearing a more casual outfit compared to his normal Hokage robes. The old man was holding the kunai Naruto had used to redirect the second blade. "Sorry if I almost hit you," he said sheepishly. "It's all right, young one." He looked around them, seeing that the clearing was riddled with scratch marks along the trees. "Do you train here often, Naruto?" The blonde nodded vigorously with a smile. "I live here." Hiruzen raised an eyebrow. "Don't you mean you spend a lot of time here?" Naruto paused. "No, I actually live here." "I thought you already knew." "Knew what?" the Hokage asked. "That the villagers kicked me out of my apartment. I got away just fine with most of my stuff. I have everything tucked behind that waterfall." "The villagers did what?" Hiruzen shouted, making Naruto wince from the noise. "They didn't want me living there anymore. Besides the obvious reason, me being a Jinchuriki. They said I was too rowdy, obnoxious, reeking of ramen." "Why didn't you come to see me?" Hiruzen asked angrily. "Because you're already busy taking care of the village. That and you're getting old," he added with a snicker. "I thought it would be best to seclude myself a little from everyone. To be honest, I kind of like living out here. No one glaring at me, talking behind my back, stuff like that. Some of the guys from the academy visit me from time to time. Choji and Shikamaru bring me food. Kiba sometimes comes out to play with Akamaru. That girl from the Hyuga came once, but it seems she's not able to leave her home much. I'm pretty sure her name is Hinata. Oh, and guess what? Sasuke came the other day to do some sparring practice. Can you believe it?" Hiruzen was dead silent for a few moments. All this at once was making his mind spin. First, he finds out Naruto was forced out of his home, knows he's a Jinchuriki, likes the way he's living, and has friends from the academy, including the broody Sasuke. "When did all this happen?" the Hokage asked. "A few months ago, on my last birthday, I think," Naruto replied. "I spend most of my time training or meditating. It's really peaceful." Hiruzen sighed. "And you're certain you don't want anyone punished for this action against you?" Naruto shook his head. "Like I said, I prefer it here. Plus, if I wasn't forced here, I wouldn't have found out a bunch of things. For example," Naruto reached his hands out so they were facing each other, about a foot apart. Lightning started dancing around his fingertips. "Lightning chakra?" Hiruzen questioned. Naruto nodded. "Shikamaru explained it to me, about chakra affinities, I mean. He left me some of that weird chakra paper. Turns out I have all of them." Hiruzen stared blankly at the blonde. All of them? Naruto nodded, vigorously. To prove it, he placed his hands in the lake the waterfall poured into, and focused on said waterfall, causing it to split down the middle. He then placed his hand on the ground, causing a few pebbles to float upwards. Lastly, he let out a small flame from his mouth. Hiruzen watched in utter surprise. Naruto grinned happily. The old man regained his composure, kneeling in front of the blonde. Naruto, you must understand this. No one in history has ever naturally had access to all chakra natures. It's possible to use them all with years of training, but to use them with such ease is unheard of. Many people would go to great lengths to take advantage of that power. Since you're a Jinchuriki, that only puts you at a greater risk. Naruto nodded in understanding. He didn't understand the importance of having all the chakra natures until Shikamaru explained it to him as simply as possible. The same went for him being a Jinchuriki. Since you're here, old man, do you think you could tell me a little more about the tailed beast inside me? Hiruzen blinked. Why do you want to know? It's the reason everyone dislikes me, isn't it? Naruto responded. I want to know everything about the beast inside me, and why it's inside me in the first place. Hiruzen thought long and hard. He knew everything Naruto was asking, but he also knew that his father didn't want him to know every detail until he became a Chunin. I cannot tell you everything, at least, not at your current age. Naruto tilted his head, confused. It's complicated, but I promise you will know everything, eventually. Naruto nodded in acceptance, sitting down to listen. The Hokage took a seat beside the waterfall, gazing at their reflection. On the night you were born, the Nine-Tails was released from its previous host. It went on a rampage, destroying everything in its path, including the village and many of its inhabitants. The fourth Hokage's wife managed to hold the beast down, while the fourth sealed it away. Since you were born on that very night, you were the best and only candidate to be the next Jinchuriki. After sealing the fox inside you, the fourth and his wife died from their injuries sustained from the Nine-Tails. I promised them I would do what I could to keep you safe. Unfortunately, the village found out you had the beast inside you, thus creating their resentment towards you. Most believe you are the fox, reincarnated, when in truth, you're just its jailer. So the stories about the fourth Hokage killing the Nine-Tails is false? Unfortunately, yes, Hiruzen replied. Fortunately, the seal used to seal the fox inside you is near unbreakable, meaning so long as you live, it will never see the light of day. And if I die? Naruto asked, nervously. If that does occur, regardless of the means, the fox will regenerate and return after several years, provided it's not placed in another Jinchuriki, Hiruzen answered. What if the seal weakens? Then it will be up to your own willpower to stop it from taking control. Naruto was growing fidgety, unable to contain his worry. What if he did lose control, and the fox used him to hurt people? He had to admit, there were a few he wouldn't mind if the fox hurt. Even so, he didn't want the beast to hurt his friends. The old Hokage rested a hand on his tiny shoulder. The blonde never understood why, but the old man had a very soothing touch. He could feel his nervousness fade away, even before Hiruzen spoke. The fourth Hokage entrusted this burden to you, because he knew you could carry it. He trusted you, and he didn't even get the chance to know you. I have had the honor to know you, and I know with absolute certainty that you can carry this curse. It will be difficult, I won't deny that. But from what you've told me, you have plenty of friends who will be around to support you. Naruto's big round eyes stared into the Hokage's small gaze and warm smile. He felt a few tears fall down his cheek, quickly shaking them away. "Thanks, old man." Hiruzen chuckled and ruffled up Naruto's thick hair. He stood ready to leave. "I know you already said you're fine living here, but if you ever change your mind, or something else happens to your new home, or with the villagers, I want you to come to me right away. You'll always be welcome at my home. That's an order, my soon-to-be ninja." Naruto jumped up and hugged the old man, much to his surprise. "Thanks again, and I will come to you if I need it." Hiruzen hugged the blonde back. He had to break away and return to his office, leaving Naruto to stand beside the lake. His smile slowly faded back into a neutral expression as he removed his kunai from the targets he'd been using. He slowly walked into his waterfall home. It was surprisingly comfortable despite its size. It wasn't much bigger than his old bedroom, and since it was right beside a lake, he had a near unlimited supply of fish. Maybe I could grow a garden, but how would I get the seeds? Maybe Choji will have some. His clan has got to have a surplus of food and means to produce it. Naruto groaned. If not, I'll have to buy them myself. The blonde placed his kunai in a pouch he kept hidden underneath his makeshift bed. He really needed to get something better than a thin mattress and a small blanket. If he wanted to, he could transform this entire cave into a proper house, provided he could get his hands on the materials. "I'll worry about that another time," he mused. "I've got to get some rest before classes tomorrow." Despite it only being midday, Naruto wanted to get fully rested so he didn't fall asleep again during Iruka's class. Though it was likely to happen either way. He'd learned to sleep through loud noises, as well as during the day. A skill he gained from Shikamaru. He laid down and closed his eyes, forcing himself into unconsciousness. He opened his eyes the next day, a full 16 hours later. He jumped out of bed filled with energy. He had less than an hour to get to the academy, so he snatched a fish out of the water and placed it over a small fire he made with his chakra. A few minutes later, he quickly gobbled it down and put on a fresh set of clothes, then grabbed a few kunai and shuriken before running off. His trek through the forest to the edge of the village was a good workout. He was easily catching up to the likes of Sasuke and Kiba, who were the strongest of their class. It still baffled him how no one knew about his natural affinity with elemental chakra. Only Shikamaru knew, and of course he wasn't going to tell anyone. It would take too much time out of his day. Naruto swung from a tree branch and landed on a rooftop. He started running as fast as he could, hopping over the streets that were already filled with civilians. The academy was in view, which meant he should be safe to take the streets the rest of the way. Academy days were the only time he was relatively safe, since he would be around other kids. The adults didn't like physically mistreating him in front of children. As for verbal abuse, he could live with it. He walked out of an alleyway and down the street, passing a few parents as they sent their children inside the academy. He tried his hardest to weave between them and avoid their gazes. But even with his short stature and natural ability to hide, he couldn't avoid their eyes. And once one adult saw him, they all knew he was there. Luckily, they didn't seem to care about him today, as when he caught a man's eye, all he did was glare and continue on his way. The blonde sighed in relief, slowly walking through the front gates and into the academy building. "Naruto, hold up!" Naruto turned to see his sensei, Iruka, jogging up to him with a smile. He smiled back. Iruka was nice, maybe a little too nice when it came to him. On the other hand, whenever Naruto decided to perform a harmless prank, he always chewed him out. But Naruto knew Iruka only did it because he cared. Ever since Iruka accepted him, his pranks had grown more and more inconsistent. "What's up, Iruka-sensei? We have kunai and shuriken training today, and it's your turn to set up the targets. Just wanted to remind you." Naruto paled. "Oh shoot, I forgot. Sorry, Iruka-sensei." Naruto apologized, putting his hands together. "It's quite alright," Iruka chuckled, his smile slowly fading. Lord Hokage informed me about your recent change in living conditions. Why didn't you tell me? Naruto averted his gaze. I didn't want to trouble you. Iruka sighed. I'm your sensei. You're supposed to trouble me. Besides, you do it anyway with all the pranks you do. Naruto frowned, sticking his tongue out. Iruka patted him on the head, ruffling his hair. Just come to me if you need anything. Food, clothes, whatever. Okay? Yes, sir, Naruto muttered with a simper expression. Also, I know you've been doing it already, but refrain from using your elemental chakra during class. Yes, sir, Naruto repeated as Iruka began to disappear inside the academy. Iruka-sensei, wait! The man turned back to face the blonde, who hid his fists in his pocket. I heard your family was killed during the Nine Tails attack. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Iruka's gentle smile was all Naruto needed to see to know that his sensei held no grudge. As Iruka went inside, Naruto turned on his heel, running towards the storage room out near the training field, tears forming. A few minutes later, the rest of his class was outside. Naruto hung up the last of the targets as Iruka began to explain their assignment. Naruto stood in the back, bored. He literally trained with kunai yesterday, and he was pretty good with them, although he would admit that shuriken were harder for him. I bet I can get more bullseyes than you, Sasuke, Kiba declared, Akamaru barking in agreement. Sasuke only huffed in reply as he walked to the front, taking 5 kunai and 5 shuriken from Iruka. As expected, Sasuke threw them with skill, giving them some added speed with a quick flick of his wrist. He landed all but one, and the rest of the class watched in awe, the girls erupting in cheers. Kiba was next. He got 7 out of 10, much to his annoyance. As Choji and Shino reassured him, Naruto stepped up next. All was silent as he took the kunai first. He brought his arm back slowly, before throwing the kunai all at once. Perfect score for the kunai, Iruka announced, much to the audience's shock. Now for shuriken. Naruto took the shuriken, throwing them the same way he did the kunai. All but one hit the target, meaning he had the same score as Sasuke. Wow, Naruto, you're terrible at this, one of his classmates shouted, most of the other students following suit. Yeah, you can't even get all 10. Seriously? Naruto muttered under his breath. I got the same as your precious Uchiha. He instinctively shrunk away, walking past his peers as they snickered and sneered. Would you all shut up? Kiba shouted above the taunts. Leave the blonde alone. It's not like you're gonna do any better. Yeah, he even did better than you, Kiba. Shikamaru sighed. You shut up too, Shikamaru, Kiba retorted. You're probably too lazy to even throw a single kunai. Shikamaru huffed while Naruto looked at Kiba with blank eyes. The Inuzuka turned, giving him a thumbs up. Naruto felt his eyes begin to water, so he quickly rubbed it away with his sleeve before smiling at Kiba. It felt strange to have proper friends, even if he didn't spend much time with them. They were all members of prominent clans, and most of their parents didn't like them talking with him. Even so, they did when they could. Sasuke was the only one who wasn't particularly friendly, as shown by the cold stare he gave Naruto as he walked past. I'll beat you next time, the last Uchiha said. Naruto couldn't help but smirk. I'd like to see you try. Sasuke smirked back, fixing his eyes back on their classmates. There seemed to be an ever-growing rivalry between the two. However, after Sasuke's clan was wiped out, he'd grown distant for a time, but it seemed he was coming back around. Dang it, a female voice pouted, Naruto turning to see who it was. Missed again. The girl had pink hair with a red bow. Her name was Sakura, a fitting name. He didn't know her that well, with Ino being the only one who spent a lot of time with her. The 3 things he did know was that she was a bookworm, she wasn't that great at practical skills, and she was a loyal Sasuke fangirl. She was often at the forefront of his mental torture, though not entirely by choice. The Sasuke fangirls seemed to have it out for him, intensified by the fact that they didn't like him in general because of the adults. Sakura had one of the lowest scores, only hitting 2 kunai and 3 shuriken. Naruto dreaded having her on his skating team after graduation, if she stayed at this level. Unfortunately, most of the fangirls were unremarkable, and he doubted they would pass. Sakura probably would, since she was by far the smartest besides Shikamaru, though the Nara never showed it. Granted, she didn't use that brain of hers often either. "What are you looking at?" Sakura asked abruptly, pulling Naruto out of his thoughts. She was standing directly in front of him, leaning forward, hands on her hips. He hated it when she did that pose. "Are you deaf, Naruto?" she questioned, narrowing her eyes when the blonde didn't answer. "Sorry, I guess I spaced out for a second there," Naruto apologized, scratching his head. Sakura huffed. "Just because you got the same as Sasuke on the test doesn't mean you can start acting high and mighty." "You're the one who's acting high and mighty," Naruto groaned internally, desperately wishing he could say that to her face. "That's enough, Sakura," Iruka commanded, standing over the pink-haired girl. She looked up at him with surprise. "You had one of the lowest scores in the class, so you have no right to tell Naruto such things. If anything, he should be saying those things to you." Sakura shrank away, apologizing to her sensei. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief as Iruka ushered them all inside. They had another lecture today, which Naruto was dreading as always. It wasn't that they were bad or unnecessary. Iruka just made it sound as dull as possible. Luckily, he could always catch up on the information Iruka taught by borrowing a book from the library. "I'll have to make a detour on my way home." "What was that?" Shikamaru grunted, as Naruto talked to himself. "Oh, nothing," Naruto smiled. "Just need to grab a few books after class." "I guess I'll be joining you then," Shikamaru sighed. "My mom asked me to pick up a book for her as well." "Mind if I come with you guys?" Choji asked, appearing behind them. "Sure," Naruto smiled. "Fine by me," Shikamaru sighed once again. Naruto took his seat in the back of the class, one seat to the left of Hinata Hyuga. He liked her. She was quiet, perhaps a little too quiet, however, but she was kind whenever she was able to push past her timid nature. And she didn't hate him, nor was she a Sasuke fangirl. She'd even gone so far as to cut her hair short after a rumor about Sasuke liking long-haired girls started to pop up. The rumor was false, since Sasuke didn't like girls, period. After that was cleared up, she began growing it out a little. "Hey Hinata," Naruto whispered to her, making her jump. "If I fall asleep again, can you wake me up 10 minutes before class ends?" It took all her strength just to nod yes. "Thanks," Naruto beamed. You're welcome," she stuttered back, twiddling her thumbs. It didn't take long for Naruto to doze off. He only caught the first 5 minutes, but knew instantly where he could find a book explaining the subject. This time, Iruka didn't snap at him, so Hinata was the one to wake the blonde. Naruto, please wake up," Hinata pleaded, nudging Naruto's shoulder, her face growing redder by the second. Naruto's eyes fluttered open as he raised his head. Iruka simply glanced at him as she continued the lecture. "Thanks, Hinata. I owe you one," the blonde murmured. Hinata slumped back in her chair, nodding slowly. The 10 minutes went by, and Naruto joined up with Shikamaru and Choji. He invited Hinata, but she was pulled away by a Hyuga adult before she could respond. The 3 boys continued without her, talking about random subjects until they reached the library. The Hidden Leaf's library was one of the few places Naruto could visit without being thrown out. The few people that worked there didn't mind his presence so long as he kept quiet, and adults couldn't touch him either, Otherwise, they'd be asked to leave. After they signed out their books, the group spent a few minutes more talking before they had to return to their clans. Naruto watched them leave, a slight pain in his heart appearing for the briefest of moments. He jumped above the village streets, heading towards his home. As he ran, he looked down at the slowly darkening streets, the sun dipping out of view. It was one of the rare moments he was able to walk through the streets without being noticed, thanks to the forming shadows. However, today, he decided to forego that idea. He wanted to get back and read his new book before going to bed, and the rooftops were much faster. Using tiny bursts of wind chakra from his feet made the journey much easier, while also letting him train with his chakra manipulation. Several minutes later, he came to the clearing beside the waterfall. It was undisturbed, as always. Not even a single leaf was out of place, a testament to how out of the way this spot was. After lighting a fire inside a broken lantern he stole, he sat down, opening the book's leather cover. The Land of Iron, a land covered with snow for the majority of the year, with swift springs and autumns occurring over the course of 3 months. The Land of Iron has no shinobi or shinobi villages. Instead, they rely on sword-bearing warriors known as samurai. The samurai act as both military and protectors, keeping the people of their land safe. They've been a neutral party in all conflicts regarding shinobi, often making their lands the perfect place for warring factions to hold negotiations. But other than this, the Land of Iron has become a place for weary travelers, searching for a fresh start or momentary seclusion. Naruto trailed off. The lantern lit his face, casting dark shadows on the stone surface behind him. The trees rustled in the chill wind, making him shiver. Seclusion, Naruto repeated. That must be really lonely. If you like what you just heard, consider hitting the subscribe button and bell icon to get notified about new videos. If there's a part you've missed, then check out the entire playlist on screen. If you like this story, please share it with your fellow anime lovers. Any support helps a lot. That's all for now. This is Ninja Kai, disappearing in a golden flash.